First off, show of hands, who can't believe that we're watching MTV again? Because I sure can't. Now, obviously, I can't see you raise your hands, so be sure to sound off in the comments down below. But this is certainly an interesting turn of events, particularly because it looks like we're going to be watching MTV for a while again, because the Shannara Chronicles is just so good. And I would like to thank everyone who watched tonight's premiere, 2-hour premiere, based on my very strong recommendation. MTV sent me the first 4 episodes actually in advance in a cool mystery box. I filmed myself opening it if you'd like to check out that video. Very, very, very unique packaging indeed. But I then gave a non-spoiler review and I said, oh, you have to watch this show. It's so good. So we can finally talk about it. I'm very curious to hear what you think of the show, and now I can finally tell you in detail, with spoilers, what I think of the show. Now, if you're new to my coverage of television, so far I'm covering Supergirl and Jessica Jones, and I'm adding more shows all the time. But what I do is I give a list of the top 5 best things in the episode that I'm covering, in this case, the first 2 episodes, and the 5 worst things in the episode. I find that it keeps it real. And I have to say, I had a hard time making my worst list because I love these first 2 episodes so much, but I managed to do it. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts, and let's get started with my top 5 things in the first 2 episodes of the Shannara Chronicles. Now, by far and away, the best thing is the visual effects. They are just so stellar. From the Fury, I couldn't believe, when they first showed the Fury in the dream sequence, I was like, that's pretty cool, but I'm probably not going to see it again for a long time. But then lo and behold, they ended on that amazing cliffhanger. We will talk, of course, later on. It's another section of the top 5 things with the fact that they allowed that Fury to disembowel the King's sister. I was like, wow, that just happened, so that was awesome. And so as we're talking visual effects, it looked very realistic. So I thought that was very good. I love the Shapeshifter. Actually, they're called Changelings, apparently, according to, I'm getting into this world. I do not read the books, but according to the Shannara terminology, they're Changelings. But I thought that was extremely well done when they first introduced that Changeling. But then also, I want to take a moment to go on a side note here and talk about that I always find it amusing when characters in a show or a movie don't realize they're in a show or a movie. Because if they did, they would totally know that dog was the shapeshifter. I was like, dude, it's the dog. I can't believe you're having all this classified information being discussed in front of what's clearly the shapeshifter. So I actually predicted a couple of the fantasy elements that would happen. I was like, oh, you know what's going to happen? A, B, C, D. And the people that I was watching it with weren't big fantasy genre fans. So they were like, how did you know that? And I was like, I watch a lot of fantasy. But I think to the show's credit, even though I could guess some things in advance, I still really enjoyed seeing them happen because they were executed perfectly, as they should be. And then also even the weapons. I thought that the weapons, the way Allanon's sword, came out of his hypersleep. And then also the villain, who's also a druid, Dagda Mor, he had his weapon come out in a similar way. And then you actually understand they wake up from their naps in a similar fashion because they're both druids. But anyway, I thought that the visual effects for this, at least these first 2 episodes, were as good as some movies, and as I've expressed before, I'll be curious to see if they can keep this up beyond the first 2 episodes. You want to hit people with all your best stuff first, so it's a real test if you can keep it up for the entire 10 episodes. Now, next up, the second thing that I liked the most about the first 2 episodes was Allanon, played by Manu Bennett. And I really do think that MTV, we just talked about being surprised that we're watching MTV. I think there are a lot of us that MTV wants to come over to watch this show, but they don't realize, or maybe they must not realize, because I don't think they advertise to us correctly. I think they're like, sure, why wouldn't you come and watch this? It's right in your wheelhouse. But it's like, you're forgetting that we've kind of developed not like a love-hate relationship with your network. So I think that MTV should have used Manu Bennett front and center for their ad campaign. I think they focused too hard on selling it to their target audience, which probably will check it out anyway. And I think if they want more crossover, they really need to play up Manu Bennett's Allanon big time. I think that he and John Rhys-Davies bring an air of respectability to this show that makes it seem not just like it's for the MTV audience. And when I say that, I mean the MTV audience today. I think this is a show that anyone of any age, of any taste would enjoy. I think it's really, really well done. But Allanon, again, Manu Bennett, has a really good track record with our area of fandom. He, of course, is an Arrow. That was something that I realized when I was looking into him at first. He plays Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. But also, as many of you pointed out, he was on Spartacus. And also, he was the lead orc in the Hobbit films, but that was, of course, done by motion capture. But he was very good there. He didn't make as big an impression as Benedict Cumberbatch, but he was, I think that was just the difference in the roles. But here, I feel like to some degree this is a star-making turn. Although I get the feeling that a lot of you feel he had star-making turns in Arrow and Spartacus as well. So I'm like, man, I hope that someone's sending these things out to movie casting people, because I think that Manu Bennett is that good. He's very, very good on this show. I cannot say enough good things about him here. As soon as I was watching the show, I was like, that's the star. And actually, the people I was watching it with did not totally agree. So I feel that MTV is 2 in 1 wheelhouse with their ad campaign and maybe their target, their test audiences. And they need to find out what other people want out of the show, because it would be Manu Bennett. All right, so the third thing that I liked about the first 2 episodes was the darkness. We're going back to that Fury killing the king's sister. I never thought that would happen, especially after she and Allanon just kind of made up. I was like, wow, Allanon must be like, well, I'm glad I made my peace, because she just got ripped to shreds. So he's like, it probably wouldn't have worked out anyway. She is, I did go into my druid sleep, and now I'm on the prowl. But no, he has a lot more honor and respect than that. But I was really surprised that happened. And again, it looked awesome. I also like that the shapeshifter killed Lauren. But Lauren was we're going to get to dumb elves and the worst things in the episode. But Lauren had been warned by the princess that she was going to kill him in front of that tree in that room. And you would think, at least for the next couple of weeks, he'd be like a little nervous around her. He'd be like, you know what? I'm just going to stand over here. So I was like, that's ridiculous. But I was glad that they did it. I was glad that they took him out. I also liked that then the shapeshifter went and killed all the Chosen and slaughtered them. And then also, even not only like violence, but they also had darkness in like Eretria when she not only roofied Wil. I was like, wow, this is testing your PG-13 limits here. But also her dad was like, yeah, I'm going to sell you to that guy. I like that they curbed it a little bit by saying I'm going to sell you as his wife. I was like, well, at least it'll be legal. But I'm glad they had that there, because it raises the stakes for that character. And this is what would actually happen in a dark, magical, mystical forest. This stuff happens, okay? So I liked that quite a bit. So I liked that the series was willing to go there, even though it's clearly a PG-13 version of Game of Thrones, in a good way. Now next, I really liked the fantasy elements of the show. I have been jonesing for a fantasy movie or TV series, and this definitely qualifies. This is what I want out of Warcraft, but so far I'm not getting it, and this is why I think people are so excited for The Huntsman, Winter's War, and why they liked Charlize Theron's character so much in the first Huntsman movie, because it's just, I think it's an underserved genre or audience, fantasy fans. I think it's certainly overserved in the world of books and literature, but when it comes to movies and television, we're not getting the love that we should be in this renaissance of genre fare. So I'm really glad to see this show come on board. One example would be when the uncle says and that uncle's supposed to be very important in the history of this series, the Shannara Chronicles, something I discovered in my research. But when he says to Wil, you can't go to the forest, Wil, there are trolls, gnomes, and rovers. I was like, oh, that's instead of like trolls, gnomes, and rovers, oh my, like the Wizard of Oz, I was like trolls, gnomes, and rovers, oh my. I was like, let's go. Let's see ya, Uncle. I'm on my way. This is going to be awesome. And I was glad that he ran into, I think it was a troll. I think that was good. So I really liked that a lot. And I liked seeing Allanon use his magic to some degree. I liked that they established that magic has a price and that, you could see it right away. Not like, yeah, it's going to come back to get me in a couple of years, so whatever, who cares? It's like, no, it's immediately dangerous to you. Look at my hand. And I was like, that hand looks awesome. So I liked that quite a bit. Then the fifth and final thing, I could have come up with a whole bunch more that I liked about this show, but I got to limit it to 5. Them's the rules of these reviews. But the fifth thing that I liked was the sets. I thought the sets were really good. And this doesn't count as visual effects because a lot of them were practical, although I will say that the practical and computer visual effects, both in terms of sets and costumes, etc., were very well melded together. Like, you weren't like, for instance, I just watched Supergirl the other night, and they went to Krypton for the first time. They showed like flying over the Krypton cityscape, and you were like, wow, that is super computery. Like, I do not believe for a second that I'm actually on Krypton. That's a very nice, like, 1990s computer screensaver. So I really appreciated here that it was hard to tell what was a computer and what wasn't. And New Zealand proves once again that it is a gift, as I've said before, to the location gods. And the last time I used that when I was talking about Skellig-Michael Island that they have in The Force Awakens, it's just like, wow, it's done. All you have to do is stick your actor in it and shoot. And that's, I think, a really huge benefit to anyone that's willing to take the time and spend the money to fly their cast and crew to these exotic locations. And I'm glad that Shannara made that commitment. All right, so next. Also, but it's not just New Zealand. I think the set designers and the production designer did a wonderful job building the sets, particularly in the Elven Kingdom. The Elcrease looks amazing, and so I was very, very impressed. But there are some problems with the Elcrease, and that's on that note, we're going to transition into top 5 worst things in the first 2 episodes. So first off, the feminism was a bit overboard. Like, I'm glad the princess wants to, be a member of the Chosen and to break those, chauvinistic rules. Although I was surprised that she came to the conclusion that all this was happening because she made it through, and that the series kind of seemed to reinforce that. They were like, yeah, you should think that. I was like, even a couple of times myself, I was like, wait a minute, are you saying that hell has been unleashed because a woman, decided to run the gauntlet and won? I also was like, that's an unfortunate metaphor that tree's bleeding all over the place. I think that a lot of, bad comments can be made about that. So anyway, I didn't like that. I also felt that, I worry that because this show is so amazing, that having such a strong feminist angle at the beginning of the show would really make a lot of people be like, yeah, I'm out, and then not see how great the show is, and that it has a really good balance of male and female characters. So I felt kind of bad about that. But, I have to say one good thing about the opening was that she realized eventually that you have to fight dirty to win, particularly when you're competing with guys. One of the reasons that women's sports aren't very popular to watch is because women usually play by the rules. Like, women are catty and will certainly say mean things about each other behind their back and, put each other down, but they rarely do underhanded, things in a physical competition, which is weird when you think about it. But, when the race started and someone tripped her, I was like, how did you not see that coming? I would have been, way out on the side, being like, I know you're gonna. I used to play basketball with all guys because for some reason no other girls in my high school wanted to play basketball, and so I know all the tricks, and I held my own. So I'm glad that she eventually did as well. But anyway, so that's the first thing that I didn't like about the first 2 episodes. Then, I guess this was going to be my third, but it kind of fits in. I thought the tokenism was a problem, and the lack of diversity. When I reviewed this show, someone said, is this just another fantasy show full of white people? And I was like, no, because there are 2 non-white elves. There's the elf commander, Tilton, played by Amelia Burns, and then there's the no-named Asian tree doctor elf. But for the most part, yeah, really no diversity. And I feel that in this day and age, it's just, there's no excuse for it, because you know that you want to attract a diverse audience. You don't, not only is it from a business perspective, but also you just don't want to make anyone feel like they're not included in the world you're trying to create. So why would you do that? Especially, and we'll talk about this, but because it's revealed that this is the future. There's been a horrible apocalypse, modern humanity has died away, and this is what's risen in its place. So there would be diversity, right? Unless you're saying some, it was all hate crimes that was the apocalypse. But I feel there's no reason for it, and I felt bad that when that person asked that, and it's a BTT regular, I couldn't say, yes, there is a lot of, diversity in this show. Watch away. I had to be like, oh. And I actually don't even think I answered them because I felt so bad. All right, so anyway, so that's one problem with the show. That's the second worst thing about the episode. The third worst thing about the episode is, again, dumb elves. I don't understand, beyond Lauren, I don't understand how the king has allowed his subjects to believe that the Elcrease is just a fantasy tale, and that it isn't really holding back a horde of angry demons that want to rip them apart and eat them. I mean, if I were the king, I would take a skeleton of a Fury and I would stick it on display. Forget the beautiful tree. I mean, I guess they need it because it's the gatekeeper to keep all these things locked in. But I'd stick a giant Fury skeleton with its like wings outstretched and its fangs, and I'd just put it right in the middle of the town square, like right near the post office or where everybody has to go. I guess nobody has to go to the, well, you know, they don't have technology so much in the future, so maybe you do. But maybe wherever anybody eats or whatever. I'd just put that right there and be like, it's real. Stop playing around. Although I have to say, if people don't think it's real, I have no idea why anybody wants to be a member of the Chosen. I'd be like, why are you competing, all of you, so hard to be a member of a group of guardians that are guarding something that you don't believe exists? I mean, I guess maybe it's a cushy job, but I think they should have established that a little bit more. I actually still don't understand what the Chosen do. And it seems that the Chosen are supposed to keep that tree alive and protect it, but if it's mostly watering the tree, up until now, obviously, I don't understand why it was a physical contest to decide who was a member of the Chosen, right? I'd be like, who can keep this plant alive for like a month? And if whoever does gets to be a member of the Chosen. All right, so anyway, those are the three things that I had problems with the show. I thought they were the worst elements. Now I have to finish my list, okay? And this is nitpicking though. I want to make that clear. I have to have 5 things, you know, again, to keep it real. But these are things that I needed to fill in the list. But I think overall, I could really only think of 3 genuine complaints. All right, so these are my nitpicky complaints. The first is that the actor playing Dagda Mor, the evil druid who is now the leader of the demons, I'm not really getting a lot of charisma off of that actor. You know, the makeup is impressive. I like the fake language. The visual effects that accompany that character are awesome. And I like all the demons that he summons to do his bidding. But he personally, I'm not like, when's he coming back? I'm like, oh, that guy, okay, what's he going to summon? So I think they could work on that a little bit. Maybe, you know, the actor, you know, it's tough when you have an actor who's under so much makeup, but that's why you need to get someone who has a lot of personality and like a really great voice. And I don't really see that. Maybe the problem is that you can't see the actor and you can't really hear the actor because they're not speaking a language that anybody understands. So I'm having a hard time connecting with that character, that villain. And that's kind of important because that's our big bad. And then the 5th thing was the Remnants of Our Time. You know, I just mentioned that they revealed that this is the future. And so I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I actually just recently read a comic book that had the same idea. And I'm sure that comic book creator is really ticked off. But anyway, and they're like, I didn't know about the Shannara Chronicles. Damn it, I wasted all my time. No one's going to make my comic book into a property now. But anyway, I hope that that's there for a reason and it ends up getting looped into the show. Because then otherwise, don't waste my time and time you could devote to other elements to building this mythology and, you know, developing characters to some crazy shot of a helicopter. And, you know, unless, again, that somehow comes into play. Maybe not this season, but you're going to have to give me something. Even if it's not a big thing this season, you're going to have to give me something to warrant its inclusion. Because, again, why take the time? All right, so that's my list of best things in the episode and worst things in the episode. And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on it. Are you enjoying and are you as pleasantly surprised by this series as I am? And do you plan to tune in for episode 3 next week? I will be covering this show as I do other television shows, as I mentioned. So I'm very excited to continue to discuss it. And I hope that a number of you will stay on because, again, I'm really enjoying it. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.